Hey, welcome to Ouachita Parish History with Dara. I'm so glad you've joined us. Today, we are going to study about one of the founding fathers of Fort Miro, and his name is Jean-Joseph de la Baume. He lived between 1731 and 1834, and he is a very interesting person who has his roots obviously in France and in Spain, but in Louisiana and also in Texas. And so we're going to look at both sides of his history. This particular information I got from the Early History of Monroe, which was written by Sylvester Briard, one of our local founding fathers' descendants. He wrote this book in 2012, but he actually got his information from one of de la Baume's relatives, which is Sylvia Villarreal Biznar, the fourth great-granddaughter of Joseph de la Baume, and she lives in Arizona, or at least she did at the time of this in 2012. So, what we're going to look at is his history, and then we're going to look at some interesting things that happened to him. That he looked for his pension, and we'll see some things about his pension with the being in the American Revolution. So he's a very interesting fella. So we'll get started. So Joseph de la Baume was the son of Count Joseph de la Baume and Mary Isabel d'Alton of the courtship of Baume, province of Avignon, France. He was born in 1731. He came to America during the Revolutionary War as a captain in the French army, commanded by the Marquis de Lafayette, and he served as company commander in the regiment of the Vicomte de Bonneville. According to his last will and testament, he was present and commanded his company in all of the battles where Lafayette was present and was at the surrender of Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown. So he's very much into the history of the United States as well as Louisiana. At the Texas State Capitol building in Austin, there is a brass plaque placed by the Texas Society Sons of the American Revolution listing Joseph de la Baume's name along with others from Texas who served in the American Revolutionary War. The end of the Revolution found de la Baume in Louisiana. The first records dated June 13th, my birthday, of 1777 show that the Chevalier de Cloet, commander of the Opelousas post, certified a position to the Spanish governor Bernardo, the Comte de Galvez, for de la Baume as a habitant for the vacherie or the cow pasture within the king's land. De la Baume was granted a 40 arpent concession located on the bayou on the Prairie de Nez Peak. So 40 arpents is similar to how we would measure an acre. I don't know the exact measurement, but it's how we would measure that. So anyway, Joseph de la Baume owned property on both sides of the Ouachita River, adjacent to that of Jean Fihol, or as we know him, Don Juan Fihol, through the town of Monroe, Louisiana, as shown on an undated early plat map for the area around Monroe, Louisiana. And actually, I think that plat map might be from 1790. But anyway, on February 26, 1778, in the post of Opelousas before Captain, Civil, and Military Commandant for the Spanish King of the Post of Opelousas, Joseph de la Baume married Dame Marie LeKentrick, or as she was also known as Anna Marie Kintry. So if you see that in history, she was the widow of Saint Mont, the daughter of Mr. Joseph LeKentrick and Dame Marie Leboeuf, native of New Orleans. However, she died the following year. It is believed she is the niece of Jean-Baptiste Fihol. In 1783, Jean-Baptiste Fihol, who had seen services under Governor Bernardo de Galvez during the Florida campaigns against the British, was appointed the military and civil commander of the Ouachita Post, which is Monroe. He named Joseph de la Baume as his first lieutenant and second in command of the post. This military district was created to help Spain hold lands and discourage the encroachment of English, Americans, and vagabonds. During de la Baume's military service at the post, the Osage and the Choctaw Indians were constantly attacking the colonists and stealing their horses. Therefore, Commandant Feehole felt like it was necessary to build a fort to protect the Ouachita settlement. So in May 1787, he issued a formal request to Colonel Estevan Miro, who succeeded Bernardo de Galvez as governor of Louisiana, in which he stated that the king should supply the funds needed to build a fort. However, this request was denied because Governor Miro felt that a fort was unnecessary. As the Indian depredations continued, Feehole again pressed Miro, but when no help came, he and de la Baume formulated plans to build the forts themselves. Feehole asked his men for a petition explaining the need for a fort, which he would forward to Miro. The petition, written in French and dated August 19, 1790, was written by de la Baume. His signature, as well as that of 17 soldiers, appear on the document. Governor Miro denied the request because he still felt that the fort was unnecessary. Of course, he's not there dealing with what was going on. Construction of the fort began on September 8, 1790, under the direction of de la Baume, and was completed on February 11, 1791. They named the 18,000 square foot stockade Fort Miro after the governor, which is kind of funny because he denied it. It was soon became the center of all activity in the Ouachita Valley. Here, Commander Feehole held his court sessions and made his announcements and placed the market. Soon they were holding dances, which became Creole-style balls. The city of Monroe, Louisiana now sits on the land of the former fort. There is a historical marker located across the street from the present-day courthouse which states, Fort Miro, original stockade built on this site in 1790 by Commandant Jean Feehole and Lieutenant Joseph de la Baume of the Ouachita District. So, if you go with your kids and take a picture in front of it, post it under these videos, and let us see that you went and found where Fort Miro is located at. So, let's see. The land was donated by Feehole, and half of the timbers was furnished by the officers. The other half was given by the garrison and the settlers. Joseph de la Baume is considered one of the founding fathers of Monroe, Louisiana, and as a result of his contribution to building the fort. Now, there is some history that I read. I'll have to go find it, but there's a letter that Feehole had written, and he was just mad because the settlers were not pulling their fair share of the weight, and they weren't bringing their fair share of the timbers donating for the fort, and they didn't want to work. I don't know if you remember from previous videos about Feehole that the settlers did not want to actually do anything other than hunt and fish and live their best life, and so they were not worried about building a fort, and so they didn't really want to stop what they were doing to go cut down trees and make a functioning society. And so if I find it, we'll do a short video on Feehole's replies about his irritations. He wrote many letters about his irritations. So anyway, when the Indian threat continued through 1792, Feehole created a cavalry unit at the request of Baron de Carondelet, which he named de la Baume as lieutenant. So you'll see that in New Orleans. You'll see things named Carondelet in New Orleans after him. After Spain ceded the east bank of the Mississippi River to the United States in 1796, Ouachita became more vital as a defense post. Commander Feehole was ordered to reorganize the fort into 2 dragoon companies. However, he felt it better to have 1 dragoon company and 1 infantry. Joseph de la Baume was named captain of the dragoon company. However, the Indian depredations continued without fear of reprisals because there were only 134 soldiers, most of them older than 50 years of age, to defend the fort. The disillusioned Feehole soon decided to resign as his continued requests for more funds and soldiers were denied. In his absence, de la Baume continued as the executive officer, and he carried the commandant's insignia. While at Fort Miro, de la Baume formed a lifelong friendship with Felipe Enrique Neri, the colonizer, legislator, and self-styled Baron de Bastrop, which Bastrop is named after, who established a colony in the Ouachita Valley. After Louisiana was sold to the United States in 1803, the Baron moved to Spanish Texas and was permitted to establish a colony between Bexar and the Trinity River. The Baron is best remembered in Texas history for his intervention on behalf of Moses and Stephen F. Austin to allow the establishment of the Anglo-American colony. In 1823, he was appointed Commissioner of Colonization for the Austin colony. This is where this shifts to talking about Texas history more than Louisiana's, but it's very interesting in how it's so intertwined. De la Baume left the fort to live in Natchitoches, Louisiana, presumably with the Baron de Bastrop, when he heard rumors that Louisiana was going to be ceded back to France. In the May 1802 report of post activities at Nacogdoches, Texas, which the authorities filed monthly with the Spanish governor in Bexar, de la Baume and his family's arrival was noted as a colonist. So in 1802, he was coming to Texas. At that time, his family consisted of himself and 8 Negro slaves. He evidently then began an interesting career as a trader between Bexar and Natchitoches, Louisiana. In 1805, de la Baume married Louisa Couturier in Nacogdoches, Texas, who already had a young son, Valerio, from a previous relationship. 4 children were born during this marriage. Victoria was born in 1805, Joseph was born in 1806, Sancre Pedro was born in 1809, and Gertrudis was born in 1811. On August 4th, 1803, de la Baume wrote to Commandant General Nemesio Solicidio from Nacogdoches for permission to settle in Bexar or La Baja, Texas, with his family, because he wished to follow the Spanish flag. So that was why he was leaving Louisiana. He wanted to stay in Spanish-controlled communities. So he called himself a physician and an herb doctor at this point. Records from a long and involved lawsuit from one of his slaves reflects that he lived in Nacogdoches until 1806. Joseph de la Baume left for Bexar when he received a Spanish land grant of 27,000 acres in Texas for his service to the Spanish crown, as well as permission to settle in the Villa de Bexar. In 1806, the Villa de Bexar had a population of 2,000 inhabitants, most of who lived in mud-daubed, grass-roofed houses. However, having accumulated substantial funds, he built a large 2-story double stone house among the cottonwood grove known as Las Alamedas. The house was built in 12 acres of gardens just 2 blocks south of the Alamo, across from St. Joseph's Catholic Church on East Commerce Street. It was known as La Baume Place for many years. The Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce building now stands on this site. Isn't that interesting? De la Baume established the El Capote Ranch on the 27,000 acre land grant. So he had 2 different places. He had the Las Alamedas house in town, and then he had this El Capote Ranch on his land grant. But there's no evidence that he ever lived on the ranch. The ranch is located on both sides of the Guadalupe River near the Capote Springs, east of present Seguin, which is 12 miles southeast of Seguin, and west of present Belmont, in present Guadalupe and Gonzales counties, near the headwaters of O'Neill Creek. The highest of these hills, Porter Knob, stands 670 feet above mean sea level and 150 feet above the surrounding landscape. Part of the property later became part of the DeWitt's colony. There is a historical marker in front of the El Capote Ranch gate which states in part, the founder of El Capote Ranch was Jose de la Baume, so it's doing his Spanish name, 1731 through 1834, a French army officer who came to North America with the Marquis de Lafayette and fought in the American Revolution. The ranch is presently owned by Gilbert Denham Jr. of San Antonio, Texas. So that was in 2012. In 1813, a seldom remembered revolution took place in Texas, which was put down in the bloodiest battle ever fought in Texas. The Spanish royalists recaptured Texas, and De la Baume was arrested as a traitor. At the advanced age of 82, he was imprisoned in a granary located on the north side of the main plaza. He spent 7 months in chains and was fined 7,000 doubloons. All of his money and papers, including his military records, were confiscated at that time. When Mexico again threw off the Spanish, he was pardoned. However, his fortune of 7,000 gold ducats, 50,000 silver pieces, and the deed to El Capote, his ranch, was lost. De la Baume was pardoned on March 8, 1814 by Jose Antonio Saucedo, the governor of Coahuila, Texas. The notice states in part, insurgents pardoned, and of the families that are able to be suspected and disturb the quietude and public tranquility of this province was the Frenchman La Baume. So just saying that he was he was the Frenchman and he was pardoned. So Joseph de la Baume later employed Stephen F. Austin as his attorney and began to petition for the restitution of his property. His petition, dated December 19, 1825, states that he had been a resident of San Fernando de Bejar since 1806. Petitions accompanying the request were signed by a number of residents of San Antonio, who later became historic figures, namely Sam Houston, Jose Antonio Navarro, Erasmo Seguin, Green DeWitt, John W. Smith, and others. On November 4th, 1828, the ranch property was ceded back to de la Baume by the Mexican government. The deed was issued in 1832 by the state of Coahuila, Texas. I'm probably butchering that, but y'all just forgive me. De la Baume is listed in the 1830 Citizens of Texas, written by Clifford White. And it states that Esteban F. Austin, so Stephen F. Austin, and Samuel M. Williams, 21, December 1832, it says, I am European by birth and married in Nacogdoches, wants to be admitted, is what it says in parentheses. And it says, my name is Joseph de la Baume, born in Montpellier, France. I am married with 4 children, 3 males and 2 females. My spouse is Maria Louisa Courtier, native of New Orleans, of age 50 years. Also included, special grant by Jose Antonio Navarro and Green DeWitt in DeWitt's colony. Joseph de la Baume, here since 1816, in San Fernando de Bejar since 1832. It is concession 22 January 1826. In a petition dated February 15, 1833, de la Baume applied through his lawyer Stephen F. Austin, and it was certified by Sam Houston for an American veteran's pension for his service in the American Revolution. And actually, I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to actually read what it says, because it's so interesting. So this pension, and if you want to look it up, it's under the Southern Campaign American Revolution Pension Statements and Rosters. You can look it up online. And if you just Google Joseph de la Baume, it'll pull up eventually. So this is the pension application of Joseph de la Baume. This was transcribed and annotated by C. Leon Harris in 2013. So it might not read in proper English. It's just going to be how they wrote things. So this goes to say, and I'm going to put up their signatures that were on these documents behind me. So anyway, this day personally appeared before me, Joseph de la Baume, a resident of Bexar in the United States of Mexico, now Texas, and made oath that he came over from France during the Revolutionary War of the British colonies under the command of General the Marquis de Lafayette as a captain, and that he commanded a company during the War of the Revolution, and that he was present and commanded his company in all the battles where Lafayette was present and at the surrender of Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown, which is so cool that he had seen all these different things. This beginning of the United States, he's seen, France, and then he's seen France and Spain in Monroe and in Louisiana, and then now he's in Texas. He was just such a big part of our whole country's history, really. It says, so that was dated 19 October 1781, that he then obtained leave of absence from the army to visit Louisiana, and during his stay there, the revolution broke out in France, which prevented his return to his native country. So he resided in Louisiana until 1800, when he removed to his present residence, which is 32 years since. When the revolution broke out at this place in 1810, he was possessed of 7,000 doubloons and $25,000 in silver and large quantities of valuable plate, which was taken by the royalists of this country, who suspected him of entertaining liberal principles. It's like, no, he's available for hire for anybody. And himself imprisoned and kept in irons for 7 months. No portion of his property has ever been returned to him. He is in his 102nd year since the 6th day of the present month. He further states that he is very poor and is too infirm to labor, and therefore prays that a pension may be granted as provided by the acts of Congress of the United States of America. He further makes oath that all his official papers were taken and destroyed by the royalists when he was taken prisoner, as well as his private papers, and that his only reliance is upon official papers on file in Washington City for the evidence necessary to his identity and the justice of his claim to a pension. So that was done in Bexar on January 18th, 1833. So then Sam Houston writes, I certify that the enclosed statement was taken by me and deposed to before the alcalde, which would be the mayor of Bexar, and that I know him to be the proper officer before whom the same should be taken. So Sam Houston is his witness, which is so cool. So then the file included a copy of the above application in Spanish and a letter in Spanish dated February 13th, 1833 from Baume to Stephen F. Austin requesting that he certify the application. So he writes, so he writes this, and he says, Honorable Sir, you will receive herewith a petition of mine to the government of the U.S. praying that a pension or some relief may be granted to me for the reasons therein expressed. I do further make known to you that I am too old and infirm to be able to transport myself to the U.S. to petition and enjoy the same there. I pray therefore that the same may be remitted to me here, if possible, and if not in the state of Louisiana, by writing to me as below directed. I observe at the same time that I never knew that such an act had ever been passed to relieve the soldiers of the Revolutionary War till now, that I have a wife of upwards than 60 years of age. I further advert that before the French Revolution, I was Count of the now extinguished County de la Baume, which is not far from Avignon in France, and the company that I commanded was called the de la Baumes of the regiment commanded by the Viscount de Bonneville, and that in case I should not be found as such in the registry at Washington, I will, upon receiving your answer, write to the General Marquis de Lafayette for further authentications on the subject. Be then so good, respected sir, as to direct your answer on the result of this my humble petition to my attorney Stephen F. Austin, via Brazoria, Texas, or as by him directed, and remaining your very obedient and respectful servant, I am yours. And so he signs it Joseph de la Baume. So then it said, this is a letter from Stephen F. Austin, and it says, Sir, in compliance with the request of Captain Joseph de la Baume contained in the foregoing letter, I transmit the enclosed papers addressed by him to the War Department of the U.S. I have been personally acquainted with the petitioner since 1821. His character for honor and integrity is unimpeached. He is highly respected by those who know him. He is very old and infirm and poor. That late Baron de Bastra frequently told me that Baume came to America with Lafayette as a captain in the French army. I believe that the statement made by him before the Alcalde of Bexar in Spanish, and that in English certified by General Sam Houston of Tennessee, which are enclosed, contain the truth. I know that the Spanish statement is authenticated before the proper officer, that he was duly appointed and in the legal exercise of the office of registrar and acting alcalde of the city of Bexar at the date of the said statement. I know his signature and those of the witnesses. Any communications addressed to my care for Captain Baume shall be promptly forwarded to him at Bexar or to his family should he have died before they reach me. Should what I have said be of any service to the petitioner, my writing and signature can probably be identified by General W.H. Ashley, which is William Henry Ashley, or Colonel T.H. Benton, which is Thomas Hart Benton, of Missouri. I've had the honor to remain very respectfully your most observant servant, Stephen F. Austin. So then the War Pension Office responded in December of 1833. So it took them months to respond. That was written in February of 1833. They said, "Sir, the claim of Captain Joseph de Baume for revolutionary service in the Allied Army has been received and examined. The principles of that Allied service referred the pay and remuneration of the officers and soldiers of each of their respective governments, and consequently the Act of 7 June 32, under which this claim is present, provided a loan for those who belong to the American forces. The papers are placed on our files. Stephen S. Austin received a copy of this." And so there's a note here, and it says the 1832 law did not make any such restriction as claimed in the letter from the pension office. So they lied and said that he could not get a pension from the United States because that was only for people that were Americans. And that was not true. According to the law. But according to this pension officer, they were not wanting to send it. So the government denied that petition. And they said that they believed, one of the accounts said that they believed it was because he had served less than 6 months. But as we know, it does it shouldn't matter. So anyway, when de Baume was old and infirm at the age of 103, he called several citizens of San Antonio together to his home in the Alamedas, and he asked that they sign and authenticate his last will and testament. Stephen F. Austin was present as his attorney, along with Francisco Xavier Bastillo, the bachelor Francisco Maines, Fernando Rodriguez, John W. Smith, Erasmo Seguin, J. Antonio Padilla, Manuel Yaturi Castillo, and his will was dated April 4th, 1834, and it was filed in court this 8th day of July, AD 1844. It is by the probate court. So anyway, John W. Smith testified by affidavit as follows. In the spring of the year 1834, I was called upon to visit the room of Jose de Baume. On entering the room, I found there assembled several of the citizens of San Antonio. Shortly after entering the room, the said Jose de Baume, in the presence of the persons present, drew from under his pillow a written document and exhibited the same to the persons present, and then declared that he was old and infirm and was desirous to make and execute a last will and testament, and that he had invited those present to see him sign and authenticate the document then in his hand as his last will. So this is what he said in his will. In the will, de Baume stated, "I am a resident of the city of San Antonio de Bexar in the state of Coahuila and Texas of the Mexican Republic. And though I am ill, I am in sound mind, memory, and natural understanding." He went on to state that he truly believed in all the articles and mysteries of our sacred Catholic faith. He stated that he had reared as a son Valerio Le Baume since his tender issue of his present wife, and directed that Valerio enjoy the same share of his estate as his other children. So his stepson, he wants him to have the same amount of the estate. His property was listed as being his own property, the dwelling and land situated in the Alameda, so that's his home, a tract of land with 300 varas frontage and 600 varas depth on the far side of the Acequia, 6 citoes of land situated at Capote Springs on the Guadalupe River, 1 cito of land between the Brazos and Colorado's rivers in the colony of the impresarios, Stephen F. Austin and Samuel M. Williams, a ranch with farmland within the boundaries of Nacogdoches, composed of 2 citoes of land along Loco Creek, as well as his household furniture and farm implements found at his house. He also requested that all of his debts be paid. It's very honorable. He directed that his title of Count de la Baume be handed down to his daughter Victoria, or if the French government disallowed a female to have that title, then his title would pass to his son Joseph. His wife Louisa Couturier was named testamentary executor of his will, along with his son Joseph and Juan Antonio Padilla. He directed that he be buried without any pomp whatever in a sacred place where all faithful Christians are laid to rest. It is believed that his grave is unmarked somewhere in Austin County near Belleville. Not long after the will was filed with the court, de la Baume died. So in 1840, Michael Erskine purchased the El Capote Ranch, and Erskine is famous for a cattle drive in 1854 from the El Capote Ranch through hostile Indian territory to California. He started out with 1,000 head of cattle and ended up in the gold fields with the same number, which is very impressive. A wooden cabin from the ranch, believed to have been inhabited by French Smith, the famous Indian fighter, was restored and donated to the Texas Tech National Ranching Heritage Center by Gilbert Denham Jr., whose grandfather purchased the property from Erskine in 1897. One of the signers of the deed was Theodore Roosevelt, who owned a horse from the El Capote Ranch, which is pretty cool. And I believe that it was Theodore Roosevelt's wife. Somehow that was in her family. It was in her family land. And so that's why Theodore Roosevelt actually ended up having 2 horses that he rode, maybe when he was a rough rider, that he rode, and they were from the El Capote Ranch, which is pretty cool. Even though it's not de la Baume's horses, it's just cool that was part of has a connection to him. So anyway, here locally, there is a La Baume crypt in the Smith Cemetery, which is located in West Monroe on Smith Cemetery Road off of Old Natchitoches Highway. And the crypt contains the remains of Josephine Smith, which is why it's called Smith Cemetery, and Hippolyte Le Baume, which is the grandson of Joseph Le Baume. And Josephine Smith was Hippolyte's beloved wife, and so the crypt is beautiful. It was built of brick, and then they put mortar, and they carefully decorated it with seashells. Unfortunately, sharpshooters, because West Monroe, over the years, have applied their skills to the shells, and so most of the shells have been shot off. Some of the descendants of the de la Baume family contend that there were 2 families in Ouachita Parish. One was the de la Baume family, and then there was a second family that was called the Le Baume family. Also important to note, families who were of French origin would drop the DE, to their name to become more Americanized. So like the Briards did that. Louis Alexandre de Briard was known in Fort Miro in the Monroe area only as Alexander Briard. So that might be why there's a La Baume and a de la Baume. So anyway, very interesting. He was very important to the start of Monroe. Had he not been there as as Don Juan Fijo's compadre, Don Juan Fijo might have lost heart and not continued working the way that he did. So behind every person that is the namesake of a town, there's always going to be people that come in behind them and shore up the efforts. And you definitely see Joseph de la Baume doing that. It's just really cool that he has history in the United States of America, becoming a country, and then, you know, being with Lafayette, and then that bringing him to Louisiana, and that moving him to Monroe. It's just really cool. And then the fact that he was in Texas, and that he's a part of the people in Texas, where they're the start of Texas as a the great state of Texas. And you see all these people that, you know, Sam Houston, and it's just so interesting. Stephen F. Austin, you know, that they were a part of his life too. And so in his 103 years, or however long he lived, that, you know, he experienced a ton of history in his life. So anyway, that's one of our founding fathers. And so if you go and take pictures somewhere and you see that at Fort Miro, at the Fort Miro location, then tag us to that. Or if you go to there's the house that's on Desert Street that I originally thought might have been his, because they have a plaque out there talking about de la Baume. But it's just, I think it's just something that they built it in recent years, and it was not actually his house, but it might have been his property at some point. But they definitely have, you know, like a little shout out to de la Baume on their doorpost. And then if you go to the cemetery, I haven't been to the cemetery yet on Smith Street, but I plan on going there to see that, because I always love going and seeing just the graveyards and just the things where people's history is written down in our area. So anyway, so I hope if you go and find any of those places, take a picture of it and post it under here, or tag us to it, and let us see that you are going and experiencing part of our great history of Monroe, Louisiana, and of Ouachita Parish. So hope y'all have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.